This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now.
Well, good morning and welcome to Open Line. And of course, we are living in day one of the wake of the first PC VOCM government budget. And this morning I have with me, as always, Dave Williams is in there to take your calls. He will be your first point of contact. He'll get you in the queue, get you on the line. And I'm your host, Darren Bent. I'll be here today and tomorrow. And you can reach us at 273-5211 in the metro area and anywhere toll free. 888-590-8626. Well, we'll talk budget for a while until you want to talk about something else. But right off the top, the big numbers that most of us can't comprehend and don't really matter to us in our daily lives, but we always know is a cloud, a specter hanging over the province, debts and deficits and so forth. So the overall deficit projected for the year is $688.5 million. That's down from the $1 billion deficit projected in the fall update. Government revenue is expected to increase to $10.8 billion. That's up a bit, $100 million over projection. And of course, much of that is on the back of oil prices that are through the roof right now. I think someone said yesterday around $121 a barrel on the market. So we're getting some extra revenue from that, and that's always good. Our growth is expected to be at about 5.5%, and that is the highest in the country. So the revenue side seems to be doing okay. Government is also, and I say also, but as well, needing to borrow $3.9 billion this year to do the things it needs to do and to keep the government running and pay the bills and so forth. So we are up in revenue, we are up in borrowing, and we are down in deficit. Okay, so there's all kinds of little small points across all the departments and all the demographics of our province that get a little bit of this or a little bit of that. Tax relief. First of all, the government says the tax relief measures are going to be in the order of $200 million. Some of them already announced they're just going to continue with them, some of them new. One of the ones that will affect certain people immediately is the increase in the basic personal amount you're exempt from paying income tax. So you don't have to pay any income tax. That's going up from around $11,000 a year of income to $15,000. So the first $15,000, people that don't pay any provincial tax on that amount. It was suggested yesterday that that's going to work out to a savings for those folks of about $340 a year. Okay, done already. The gas tax reduction of 7.5 cents a liter, that's staying in place for gas, 9.5 for diesel. They're not going to change that. That's going to be made permanent. Also, a break for small business, and we heard them complimenting that yesterday. They're going to get a reduction in their tax rate, and it's going to be gradual over the next year or two, 2.5%, 1.5 in 1 year, 1% in the next year, and so forth. Also, a reduction in registration fees for passenger vehicles. That was already done by the previous administration. They are going to continue that. So if you're going to pay your registration, you're going to see that it's below $100 a vehicle now for a regular vehicle, maybe a bit more for bigger vehicles as well. But it's going to stay in place. Okay. A boost for seniors. Yes, there is something in there for seniors specifically. The benefit, the seniors benefit is going to be increased by 20%. And I think the seniors benefit now, if I remember correctly, is around $1,600 a year. So that'll jump by 20%. And of course, the home heating supplement program that we've heard, and this is for pretty well anyone that's using furnace or stove oil. They're going to continue what was already in place there. The supplement program, that's not going to change. It's going to continue. They say that's going to save consumers around $12 million annually. And $36 million in the budget to go towards the oil to electric rebate program. So they are still promoting that. For families with young children, what are we going to see? Well, Newfoundland and Labrador Child Benefit is being extended to an additional 3,000 children, increasing support for those who already receive it. And about 33 million, a big one, is going towards new child care spaces, 1,200 spaces that are already in progress, and another 400 spaces. The big one, of course, is healthcare. And the province is putting big money into healthcare, all in an effort to, enhance the experience of people that end up in the system, whether you're at wait times in ERs or if you need to get from one place to another. They are investing $5.4 billion in healthcare, $6.5 million allotted for the nursing travel team, which officials say will reduce the expense in that regard. It's up, and of course, we've all heard about the travel nurse issue that's cost us somewhere in the range of $80 million over the past while. This is to offset some of that and to get local nurses involved in that program. Under recruitment and retention, they're talking about $8 million for nurses and nurse practitioners, and $3.5 million to put doctors in ERs and other places and so forth throughout the sector. So the more doctors, more nurses, the better. $19 million has been put aside for the full coverage of eligible medical transportation costs. So anybody that's got to travel, and if you meet the criteria, they got $19 million in that. And $3 million is going to be used to provide 24-hour health care services at the Botwood Hospital. So folks in that area will get a boost there. And they're looking to expand, no money set, but they're looking to expand Whitburn. We don't have any details on that. And the prescription drug program funds there are going to be increased to $22 million. And of course, the devil's in the details of that, what's getting covered, what's not getting covered. They did put a bit of money aside, I suspect probably design engineering work. They're talking about upgrading St. Clair's Hospital, which desperately needs it, of course, since they canceled the new hospital that was planned by the previous government up on Kenmount Road at a cost of around $12 billion. They're now putting $1.5 million into the redevelopment of St. Clair's. That would probably be engineering work, planning work, advanced work, not actual mortar work. And also $12 million for the redevelopment of the Janeway and expansion of long-term care beds in several communities. I think there's an increase of some 500 beds across the province, which would be welcome, of course. Any money spent in the hospital system, like for the ER doctors to increase them, maybe cut down on wait times, is absolutely welcome by many that end up in that system, of course. So anyway, we are going to go to our first caller of the day, and Colin is on line one, and Colin wants to talk about the budget. So let's get Colin in the queue here if I can find the machine that'll make it work for me. There it is. Good morning, Colin. You're on open line. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Bent. How are you on this last day of April?
Not too bad, sir. Not too bad. Beautiful day.
Very good. It is. It's a great day. I want to talk about the budget with specific emphasis on the justice system. I applaud the minister for the money that her government is putting in to the justice system, increasing sheriff's officers and more police officers. They
didn't actually say sheriff's officers in the budget. Actually,
oh,
that's been left open. Yeah.
More police, more crowns. But conspicuously absent was any mention of funding for legal aid or funding for improving brick and mortar courts, actually building more courts, because you can have as many judges as you want. But if you have the same number of courts, they can't all be in the same court at the same time. So you need more courts, especially in the Northeast Avalon, specifically St. John's. The court system here is archaic, to be polite, especially the Supreme Court down on Duckworth Street. It's time that we had a new, in my opinion, that we had a new comprehensive provincial court, Supreme Court, and Court of Appeal building. I think it would be ideal to have it all housed in one complex.
Yeah, and I know, I started covering the justice system in 1992 and did so for 15, 16 years. And of course, the entire time, there was always this call, especially from the chief justices, for a new court facility. There was even talk of it going up at the Old Grace location at one point and somewhere else, and it just never got anywhere. I think the big problem, one of the big problems, of course, with the system we have now is security. It's a tough place for sheriff's officers to ensure the safety of everyone in the building, and whether you're the prisoner or whether you're the general public, of course. And it's not designed for today's needs. And of course, the other one down in Atlantic Place, on the 4th floor of Atlantic Place, it is a difficult scenario. They've done some remodeling over the years, but a new court facility is something that it's one of those things where there's no political value in it, yet it is something that is lagging behind. Much like the old Waterford Hospital needed to be done. Things need to be done, whether they're politically advantageous or not. And a court facility would make a lot of sense for sure. You're absolutely right.
I think so. And we don't hear anything about funding, or rarely hear anything about funding for legal aid. You hire more crowns, more police officers, more people get charged because there's more criminal investigations. But not, a lot of people cannot afford a private lawyer to pay the expense for that, and they have to turn to the legal aid system. But rarely do I hear anything about funding for the legal aid system in this province, and the hiring of more duty counsels and trial lawyers for the legal aid system.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because the Justice Minister, I believe, said yesterday that she had recently met with the legal aid administrators and so forth, and they indicated that they were doing great. If that, and that's something she said that they would monitor and have continuous dialogue about. But it seemed from her comments that legal aid wasn't looking for much, if anything, in new supports and so forth. And I don't know, your experience or background, but I know over the years that the province has gone to outside lawyers to augment, gone to private lawyers to augment the legal aid system at fairly significant expense.
Yeah, it's you're exactly right. That's a very good point. And the Legal Aid Commission in the province, they have a special defense system set up for where they have senior legal aid lawyers representing clients on extremely serious criminal matters like murder, for example. There's already the example of that out in the West Coast with the Dean Penny trial with Mr. Brace and Mr. Bouchy representing him. That's costing a lot of money. It's taking 2 lawyers to work that case. They're both with legal aid. And I'm just very surprised that, as you say, that legal aid, the commission has told the minister that, pretty much that they're doing okay. It seems that if the Crown Attorney's Office is stretched by a shortage of crowns and the police, they need to hire more police officers. It seems to me that there could be a knock-on effect with the Legal Aid Commission and the number of lawyers that they have working there. Not only the lawyers that handle the criminal cases there, but civil matters too. You have to remember legal aid handles civil cases too, family law matters. So I'd be very interested to see what the budget is for that.
Yeah, and so they seem to be funding all ends of it except for legal aid, and to a greater extent. But that seemed to be the indication yesterday from Justice Minister Conway Ottenheimer that she had meetings with them recently, and they seem to be chugging right along as needed, but would monitor in case there were some changes to that. And of course, with new police officers and more judges and more prosecutors, you may need more public defenders as well. So we'll see how that goes.
Like that, Yep.
Yeah. All right. Did you want to make a final point on that, Colin, before we move on?
Yeah, I just, we see in other provinces like Ontario with Doug Ford up there. When he first came into office, he cut tens of millions of dollars from that province's legal aid system. And it's easy to cut budgets for the most disenfranchised in society. People who need legal aid for whether it's a civil matter or for a criminal matter. And if there's not enough criminal defense lawyers in the system, and criminal defense lawyers, by the way, are the only lawyers that are referenced in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Yes. Yes. Well, the right to defend yourself is entrenched, of course.
Yep. That's right. And if we don't have enough criminal defense lawyers for criminal matters and lawyers for other matters, family law and the like, then the whole justice system suffers. It's great to have it for crowns and increased crown attorneys and police officers, but as you rightly point out, defense lawyers count too.
Colin, thank you very much for calling in this morning. You got the first subject matter word on the budget on Open Line this year. You're talking justice figures and money being spent to increase and promote a better court system, of course, and your concern is absolutely noted. Thank you very much, Colin. We're going to go to break now. You have a great day.
Cheers. All
right, take care. We'll be back in just a few minutes on Open Line. Welcome back to Open Line, and you can give Dave Williams in our production studio a call to get on the line, 273-5211 here in the metro area and across the province, free of charge. 888-590-8626. And of course, we can talk budget or we can talk whatever you want to talk about. We've been talking budget so far on the show. And of course, our first caller this morning, Colin, talked about investments in the courts, 21 new RNC officers and 25 new RCMP officers over the next 2 years. And of course, for the RNC, they just welcomed 18 new officers earlier this month through a graduation ceremony and induction, and so if you're adding them together, that would be 39 new RNC officers that would be stationed across the province within a 2-year period. So does that add up to better, safer communities? My experience with RNC, that as long as people can see them, that makes a big difference. Visibility is a big thing when it comes to policing, especially in school zones, especially in communities and residential areas. The more cars on the road, the more officers on the road, the better it is for all of us. And also, they're going to spend $1.7 million to hire 7 new judges, and funding has been set aside for court staff and Crown prosecutors as well. So your views on that, welcome, of course. And we're going to talk MOU a little later, because this is MOU Day in the province, and I say that this is the day that the review panel's report will be in the hands of government, not necessarily before the eyes of the province, but certainly in the hands of government, and that is the next big step to finding out where that is going to go. But I believe we're probably going to talk budget now, because I have the Shadow Minister for Finance and Treasury Board on the line, and that is Minister Shadow Critic Studley, MHA for Mount Sion. I apologize for that this morning. A little busy here, but welcome to Open Line.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and congratulations on being the Open Line host for this week.
Yeah, there you go. The chair will spin, maybe somebody next week. It'll be different. Well, look, I've been hearing all kinds of reviews of this budget, and a lot of it is, and I don't mind saying, underwhelming. In a lot of areas, people were hoping maybe for more. But when you've got a province in the financial situation that it's in, how can you do more?
Well, I think that's an excellent question, and I think you've done an excellent job of I guess, crystallizing people's sentiment about this budget. It is underwhelming. And I think also, as you mentioned, today is the deadline for the MOU. Today is the day that the MOU expires. It's also the day that the review comes back. And I know that the Minister of Finance would have loved to have $1.4 billion extra that we would be getting now, if they had progressed with negotiation on the definitive agreements. they would be getting $1.4 billion now, and that's kind of backdated for the last 2 years, and then, $1 billion a year, then that's just the kind of I'm sorry money. Anyway, I know this isn't a Churchill Falls call, but I think, that is where they can get money to do all the things that they promised in the election, because in yesterday's budget, we didn't see most of the promises from the election. I think the Conservatives, they had a lot of hype. They sold Newfoundland and Labrador on change. And I think yesterday they didn't really deliver that. Now, some of the things they told us they were going to do, they did do. They did increase the personal tax exemption, and that's going to save workers $28 a month. Fair. They decreased the business tax 0.5%. So, if you're a small business owner and you have, let's say, $100,000 in profit, you're going to save $500 a year. Fair. But really, when they sold you on lower taxes, I wonder, Newfoundland and Labrador, is that what you were expecting? We have not seen a rotational worker tax credit. And they also sold Newfoundlanders and Labradorians on better health care. A lot of what they've announced was the same as we were already doing. The travel nurse internal program was already in flight. The redevelopment of the Janeway, the extra investment in cardiac care, those were already in flight. And now the Minister of Health yesterday saying that, you should sue her and sue the government to get care or to get compensation for the lack of care. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. I mean, on budget day, when your government, one of your three pillars is better health care, the Minister of Health comes out and says to sue her. I think that kind of speaks for itself. And then there's so many other things I think that missed the mark. There's no mention of early childhood educators in the budget whatsoever. They're still building 3 ferries. They're doubling down on renovating St. Clair's. And they're also changing the future fund, the law around the future fund. So $185 million would have gone in the future fund this year. They're changing the law so that won't happen. And that $185 million is built into this budget, and they've now essentially spent it. So I think that's an important piece. It is a future fund discussion, but that does go into the budget discussion. That's $185 million that isn't going to the future fund. And then otherwise, the deficit would have been $185 million more than it is, which is $688 million. So a very big deficit. And then, they promised to make us the tourism capital of Canada, but yet the tourism budget is lower. They have $1.5 million less for tourism. And so I guess overall, I think the budget really missed the mark and did not meet what Newfoundlanders and Labradorians were expecting.
If you set the MOU aside, Sarah Studley, and you had to sit there, where would you have put more money? What would you have done to help, Newfoundlanders and Labradorians cope with the cost of living? And I say that only because there's a big swath of people across this province that got no cost of living help at all from the budget.
Yeah, and I think when we look back at the election, and there was a fiscal update a month and a half before the election where we had a bigger deficit of projecting based on a lower oil price. And I think, our economy, unfortunately, in our budget, a significant component of that is the price of Brent crude, which we have no control over. And so the deficit last August was higher. And then a month and a half later, we had an election. And so the Conservative Party put together a very big package that they sold to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, knowing what the deficit was. So they knocked on your door and they said they were going to lower your taxes and give you better health care and give you a safer community. We saw some investments in the budget for policing, but those were things that were already in the plan. The Crown Attorneys, for example, we had already announced 18 new Crown Attorneys over 3 years. So that was already in the plan, the new Crown Attorneys they've announced. So really, they knew the deficit coming into those election promises, and I know they weren't really expecting to win. And then they won, and that's what Newfoundlanders and Labradorians wanted. And now they're not really delivering on their promises for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, but they are doing things like building new ferries. I wouldn't be building new ferries. I wouldn't be investing in St. Clair's. We would be.
But you would be building a new hospital, though, just the same, right? Like that was part of the plan. This multi-billion-dollar hospital. You'd be doing that.
So the hospital, we never got to a place where we had agreed on what the scope would be and to the price. And I know the PCs, I think every time they mention the hospital, it's a higher number. When we were there, we were looking at it. There was no $10 billion was absolutely not what we were looking at. Maybe a phased approach. None of that had been decided. But we were also working towards the MOU, right, where we would be getting $1.4 billion now, and we'd be getting $1 billion. And Hydro-Quebec would be developing Gull Island at no cost to us, and we would own 60% of it. Right. So yes, we had ambitious plans for healthcare for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, but I'm also very proud of the MOU, and I'm very proud to be a part of a government that we were trying to change and improve Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. And we don't know what the current government's plan is. We will see the review today. I don't know if it'll be public today, but the government will get the review today. We know that they've budgeted $8 million for a referendum. I mean, that's very expensive to find out if people want it or not. But I also challenged the government. Last January, we sat through 4 full days and nights of expert testimony about this exact MOU. And the Conservatives, and they had extra budget to hire as many researchers as they needed, as many experts as they needed, and the Conservatives could not vote on whether or not to proceed with the MOU or not. They walked out. They didn't vote no. They walked out, and they have not formed their own opinion about the MOU, despite almost unlimited resources to help them form an opinion. So instead, they've gotten together a group of other people to give them an opinion on top of all the other groups of people, and then they're saying they want Newfoundlanders and Labradorians to decide. I mean, we've been elected, they've been elected, they have almost unlimited resources to get advice on the MOU, and we still don't know how they think. So, I mean, I think they really need to step up and start making some decisions here.
Yeah, let me go over to healthcare just for a second, if I could. The investments in new doctors, new nurses, and so forth, and with a plan, of course, to cut back on wait times, and there's been investments in equipment and so forth. And your government, the current government, trying to recruit people to fill the spots in those jobs with a whole idea of cutting the wait times and terrible wait times at some of the hospitals and so forth. Do you see that moving forward in any positive way from these investments? And this is something that you guys are saddled with, and I put it to the Premier when I had him on. It just seems successive government after government after government can't seem to get a wait time down for some of the testing to less than 18 or 12 months or what have you. It's extremely frustrating and harmful in some ways.
Absolutely. And I think, the PC government, they made very big promises for healthcare. They promised to have a 24-hour emergency room in Botwood. They promised a 24-hour emergency room in Whitburn, I believe. And those money is not the answer for those problems. Like if money could solve those problems, we would have solved those a long time ago. It is not easy to get the right healthcare worker working in the right place. I'll be honest, no matter how much you pay them, we had extremely high signing bonuses for all kinds of specialists and family doctors, and it's still really challenging. I was immigration minister for a while, and we had teams, writing doctors on LinkedIn. As soon as they would see a doctor who seemed unhappy on LinkedIn, we'd have someone writing them a message on LinkedIn to say, have you thought about coming to Newfoundland and Labrador? There's no... they are looking under every rug to find every healthcare worker to come to Newfoundland and Labrador, and it's not. And there's no easy fix, and it's not a problem money can solve. So I think that's a challenge that everyone's grappling with. But I do think we need to look at the Minister Evans, the Minister of Health. I know that Minister Evans cares a lot about healthcare for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. I would say Labradorians in particular, as she should. And yesterday, we heard from her that she is extremely unhappy with healthcare in Newfoundland and Labrador. She suggested that everyone sue her, and that if things don't change, she doesn't know how she can stay in her job. And I think that's like alarm bells going off. The Minister of Health is saying that on budget day to media, and so. There's obviously the Minister of Health and the Premier are obviously on very different pages, and I mean I don't know how they're going to handle that. But that does not give me a lot of faith about healthcare, one of their core election promises on Budget Day.
I am speaking with the Shadow Minister for Finance and Treasury Board, Sarah Studley. And Sarah, if you don't mind, do you mind hanging on while we come back from a break? And we just got a couple more questions for you.
I would love to. Thank you, Darren.
All right, you just hang on. We'll go to break. We'll be back on Open Line shortly. Welcome back to Open Line. I'm your host, Darren Bent, and I have on the line the Shadow Minister for Finance and Treasury Board this day after Budget Day in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, Sarah Studley. And I'm just looking at the investment, if I could, the investment in emergency room doctors and the investment in nurses. And the only way the system gets better and more, I guess, responsive to people, it would seem like having more emergency room doctors and more nurses. People with experiences that go over to the Health Sciences Center, I suspect the busiest hospital in the province, is that they know they're in for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, whatever hour wait, if it's not like life-threatening injury that they've suffered. And of course, when they get there, they ask the same question that most reasonable people would ask. How many doctors do you got on tonight, or what have you? And it's like 1 or 2. And it would just seem that if you had more doctors, maybe that waiting room full of people would get seen quicker and those times would go down. Do you not think that that is a good first step in that response to that issue? Because it's not just an issue at the health sciences, it's an issue at hospitals around the province.
Sure. And I, if I was in the emergency room, I would certainly think that. If I was waiting to see a doctor, I can certainly understand everyone's frustrations. I heard from constituents the last few days, especially with the new core care system launching, and I think everything was a bit slower. Hopefully that sped up again. But I do have to say, I was in cabinet for, 4 or 5 years now with Premier Dr. Andrew Furey and, Minister Haggie, both whom have a lot of more healthcare experience than I do. And they, I know the healthcare system, the problem is not just the number of doctors in the emergency room. There's like it goes way back. And I guess that's kind of outside of my area of expertise. But I do know that the Conservatives now, they have, this political doctor, I'm sure this has been talked about on your show before, that they're paying $275,000 a year to provide part-time political advice, right? And so they need, the Premier said he needs this expert, overpriced political advice to give him expert healthcare advice. So, if he's the solution to healthcare in Newfoundland and Labrador, then hopefully he's advising the Minister of Health. He's advising the Premier about how to fix these emergency room problems. I do want to also, while we're talking about healthcare, to thank all the healthcare workers, because I know the transition to core care over the last week has been extremely difficult and challenging. A whole new IT system, and I was very proud to be part of the government to put in that system, and I know it's a big change for Newfoundland and Labrador. It should mean significant improvements for healthcare for all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. It was over a $450 million investment, and I know the IT teams, the healthcare workers, they've been working on this really hard for the last 2 years. Now, we were in control of the launch, but hopefully, I know things were a bit slower. Hopefully that, everyone will become more familiar with the system, and all of those things can get resolved. And we will see a significant benefit and value from increased efficiency, better care as a result of that significant IT investment in our healthcare.
One thing that was, it seems to be silent, I've looked through the documents, I haven't seen anything, and there doesn't seem to be much, or if any, mention of the fishery in this budget.
Absolutely, actually. So I would agree with you. So today, I believe I have to give a response to the budget in the legislature. And obviously, I'm going through all the areas, all the portfolios, and fishery. I was like, I don't have fishery. And then I didn't want to stick it last because fishery is so important to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. And then I went back through the budget, and there is a small mention of fishery, and there is a mention that they are going to continue the marketing. There's I can't remember how it's phrased, but there is an amount of money, so many million, for seafood marketing globally. So they're going to continue that investment. But that's an excellent point, and one that I will be bringing up in the legislature today. Fishery is incredibly important for Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm not sure if everyone in this province thinks that the fish, there's no more challenges in the fishery for the government to solve. If that's the case, that's great. I'm not sure that is, and we will be bringing that to the legislature, absolutely.
Okay, so Sarah Studley, thank you very much for your views. We'll be looking forward to hearing what you got to say in the legislature. You got a few more hours to put together your final thoughts, of course, and as always, the opposition, as it is your job, you will be keeping the government's feet to the fire on all of these issues, and we know that you'll be watching closely over the next while to see what kind of outcomes we get from this budget. And I suppose it's like anything else. If the government succeeds, we all succeed. So maybe that'll be the case. But we will be the ones on the other end of it, and we will be living it over the next year and see where this goes. So thank you very much. And of course, I know you'll be watching closely today regarding the MOU and what word may come from government in the legislature today regarding that report. Sarah Studley, thank you so much for joining Open Line.
Thanks so much, Sharon, for having me on. Best of luck.
All right. All the best. We're going to go to a break now, but we're going to come back in a couple of minutes. We're going to be talking MOU with Dana. Clyde wants to speak about the budget, and we got some other people in the hopper. So we'll be back on Open Line in just a few moments. Okay, welcome back to Open Line, and we are going to go to line 4 with Dana. Dana, thank you very much for holding on and your patience, and you want to talk about MOU today?
Yes, I do. But before that, I'd like to mention we came up with an idea when I was living in St. John's on the streets with my friends. We had Thrive. We came up with the idea for the plasma lighter. And you can get them at Walmart for $40, retail $40 as a plasma lighter. It's the only lighter you'll ever need. You can light your cigarette in a hurricane. And it's got a little light on it too, so as you can see, right? There's a plasma lighter, and it's $40 retail at Walmart.
Okay.
So we came up with that idea at Thrive, and coincidentally, one of the boys was Rodney Healy, myself and Rodney Healy, and a guy named Leonardo Francois. The Pope, right? Pope, Leo. He's a straight person. That's his real name.
There you go.
Leonardo Francois. Anyway, I thought I mentioned that. You can get them at Walmart.
There you go. Okay, good plug for Walmart anyway. Yeah, so Dana, what else you got on your mind? You want to talk MOU?
The MOU, I mean, is there a better option than what we're being offered by Quebec and the PC, Liberals and the PC government? Is there a better option than we're being offered? Or is that the best we can get? Well,
that's the $225 billion question, isn't it? That's what they say that this is going to be worth. I mean, that's what the Liberal government posted out as a benefit to the province. That's a lot of money, of course, over time. But you can always ask that, though, can't you, Dana? Is this the best of anything? Can we get more or can we get different? How would it work out in the future? One doesn't know. One thing is for sure, they're never going to repeat 1969 again. You can guarantee yourself that anyway. But is it the best? I mean, look, today I could negotiate a deal with somebody today and get the best possible deal today. And in 5 days from now, something changes and there's a better best. If you know what I mean. So it's always like that. But anyway, they're gonna get the independent review back in their hands today, apparently, and we may hear more about it going forward. But it is a solid question, and it should always be asked: is this the best? Can we do better?
So right now, as far as we can tell, that's the best option we got.
It's the only option we've got. It's not necessarily the best. And an independent review group set up by the Conservatives, and some people question the independence of it, but that group is going to come back with their view on it, and they may say, no, this is not the best we can do. We can do way better than this. We may want to just park this and come back maybe in 10 years and see if we can get even more. So if there was a delivery system to the eastern seaboard of the United States other than through the transmission lines in Quebec, what would we benefit if we didn't need the transmission lines in Quebec and we could still deliver?
what kind of money would that bring into our coffers as Newfoundland and Labrador compared to this offer from the MOU and the government, PCs and Liberals? Will we be much better off if we didn't need the transmission lines through Quebec? How much more money would that put in our pocket than this MOU idea and all that?
The way I understand it, Dana,
right?
that's a good question, but here's the thing. I think we would like to put transmission lines through Quebec so we can get the power to the rest of the country and south of the border and everywhere like that. They're not interested in that. So now that's why we're negotiating, or that's why the previous government negotiated a deal so that Quebec would develop the project and then they would buy the power and then they would resell it at a profit beyond that because they won't let us put our transmission lines through their province to get our power to market somewhere else.
Okay, this is like deja vu, and I'm not even old enough to remember when it actually happened. It's like, isn't that like are they like looking us in the face and smiling and taking it from us, or are we just giving it to them? Like it was back in the day with all of our resources since Confederation's beginning. They've been taken. Is that what this is? This MOU? Or are they trying to blind us to what's obvious?
Well, Dana, all I can tell you is we're going to find out hopefully a lot more about it later today or tomorrow or certainly next week and see where we are. Did you want to have a final word before we moved on?
Yes, I needed you finish. What if there was an option other than Quebec's transmission lines?
Well,
we had an option?
We don't have Quebec's transmission lines. They're not letting us put transmission lines through Quebec, so we don't even have that option. The only option we got is to sell it to them and let them resell it.
So they have to build the transmission lines to the eastern seaboard. They don't already have the transmission lines.
Oh, no, they do. Oh, I see what you're saying. So, yeah. So the only option we have is to sell it to Quebec, and then they use their lines and send it.
What if there was another option?
Yeah, no, there may be. And we may find out.
Newfoundland and Labrador, if we had another option and we could circumvent everything that Quebec is doing, and the Liberals and the PCs, what if we could circumvent it and go around Quebec? Because we could. You think about John Diefenbaker and Winston Churchill and Ike Eisenhower, World War II, the Allied forces. How did they communicate? How did they communicate?
Yeah.
What is it? What's it called?
Well, they had a transatlantic communication cable. Yeah, yeah.
There was a cable.
Yeah, that's right.
There was an underwater cable from North America to London, England.
Well, we have that now with the last Churchill Falls deal that goes down to Nova Scotia, right?
Yeah, but I mean, what is it called? These communication cable systems that are across
fiber
the bottom
optics
of the
or
ocean.
whatever it is. Yeah.
Couldn't we secure a transmission system along the coastline, down the coastline of the coast of Canada, and go underwater with the cable system? Couldn't we circumvent Quebec if we ran a power line along the coastline under the water, like the transcontinental cables that are all over the world? You can go to the National Geographic atlas and you can see them all under the oceans. They're going everywhere. There's one from North America to Australia.
Yeah, so Dana,
isn't that an option?
Yeah, so Dana, those options are things that makes you wonder that the people that are really smart at this sort of stuff haven't put on the table for this. Dana, I'm going to thank you for your call and your time this morning. I appreciate it. They're good questions and they're good options. But I've got a lot of people in the queue here. I'm going to move along. But they're all good questions, and I'm sure there's somebody out there that can answer them. I'm going to move along now to line one with Clyde. Clyde, welcome to Open Line. Clyde, are you there?
Me?
Hello, Clyde.
Yes, hello.
Okay, sir. Welcome to Open Line.
Yes, I say I'm a long-time caller. I even used to call in the Baz one time, so.
Oh.
But anyway, I don't think there's much in the budget. There is a long time getting the dates for what they had there. But anyway, I'm leading back to is I think they already announced money for the roads this year, right? Paving and bridges.
Yes, yeah, they did. There's a big project. They named a lot of roads across the province that they're going to do for sure. And always with roads, sometimes there's money left over and they might do some add-ons and so forth. But that was announced probably in March, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's my point exactly, because I'm wondering now, is the bids already gone out for this? Because tomorrow is the 1st of May, and they talk about we only got a short window between now and, say, October, right?
Yeah, no, and absolutely right. So we did get notice last week from the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure that I believe they have 26 of those out now. They are claiming that this is earlier than normal to get these out. And, of course, you're right. So they can award money in projects. You have a short season to do these in, and a lot of times there's engineering work that has to be done before you can even start the project. So, yeah, it takes a bit of time. Everybody always wonders why you don't do it all in the 8 weeks of summer, but that's not possible. There's not even enough companies in the province to be able to accomplish that. But they did send that out last week, saying that they've got 26 out the gate, and they're hoping to get a bunch more out soon. So
yeah, well, I know all about it because I've been working in construction the last 4 or 5 years as a flag person, right? And what happens, Darren, is right now we got daylight in the morning, and we got the long evenings, right? So you got a 14-hour span there. Sometimes we did work. You got the time, right? But now, once you get back into October or September even, in the evening it's going to be dark 6:30, 7 o'clock, and you lose your time. I know we went right up December last year putting in guardrails, so
yep.
We never had much of a time span in between,
No, a lot of work done late last year too, because it was dry and so forth, so that allowed for when the asphalt plant stayed open, I believe, and you're able to get a lot more work done later in the year. But you're right, if you're going to make hay, this would be the time to make it. But unfortunately, it's just the getting the work out the door, the money funded, getting the engineering work done, and then it all falls on folks like you all at once, and then you're in a scramble for the rest of the year.
Well, you had all winter government changed. I know this government's only in there 6-7 months, but still, every year it's the same thing, Darren, and I'll leave that at that. But the only thing else I can tell you is we have potholes coming up everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And we have an asphalt plant here on Burin Peninsula, and you don't even see a sign for the potholes. I know I recently seen it last night that somebody busted the rim of the tire because there was no signage on the road and it was dark. So, and it's no good, Darren, going around wasting money, putting this old asphalt in the bags, right? You just run over that and then, pow, when the plow comes out, gone. Ours was done last year. We got patched up here out in Rockar, where I'm calling from, on Burin Peninsula.
Yep.
And we got it patched up, and now, after the winter, after the plow come out and that, well, that's it. Yep. The only way to fix them holes, Darren, is not just put it in there. You got a hole there, and it's all falling in around it. You're not going to put nothing in there. You got to dig that up and prep it out and put proper stuff in there.
Yeah.
That's the only way to do it.
Cut it out, fix it, and move on. And Clyde, you're right with that. It happens every year. And you know what? Maybe this new government will have a look at it later this year and into the fall, and maybe be able to get some of the stuff out the gate over the winter, like you said, and then it's ready to hit the road running early in the spring the next year. Clyde, thank you for your call, sir.
Yeah,
It's
one more thing. It's a safety issue at that because, if you got emergency vehicles like fire, ambulance, or police even trying to get to you, they cannot drive over them roads like that.
Yeah.
But, there's only certain spots that's really bad that should be fixed,
Every area of the province has the same issue you're seeing on the Burin Peninsula, I guarantee you. Yeah.
Oh, I know that. I listen to it all the time, Darren, and I'm just throwing it out there that there's no good about putting that quick patch down in a hole that's already caved in and around it still.
Yeah.
You got to dig that up, and you got to prep that and put the proper stuff in there, and hopefully it'll last. And at least then one spot will be fixed, right?
Yeah. Okay, I'm hard up against the news here,
yes,
Clyde.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that. Greatly appreciate your call.
Thank you very much.
Biggest rainfall comes along, that'll all wash out again. You are absolutely right. We're going to go to news. We'll be back in a few moments with Open Line. Welcome back to Open Line. I'm your host, Darren Bent. And on line one, we have the MHA for Bonavista, but you know him better over the past couple of days as the Minister of Finance for the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, Craig Pardy. Minister, welcome to Open Line.
It's great to be with you, Darren. You're doing a good job.
Well, okay.
You're doing a good job, and you must have recognized the picture on the budget documents. The location.
Oh yes,
it was Bonavista.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. And look, so Minister, I'm going to start you off with I think the question that was asked on the morning show, and everybody wants to know: did you keep with tradition and buy a new pair of shoes and wear them when you delivered the budget yesterday?
No, I absolutely did not, Darren. I went with my same shoes because we always said that we want to be fiscally prudent and spend smarter. So I wanted to stick with that narrative, and I didn't want people to look that I splurged on new shoes at this time. So I think that fit with the narrative. But just between you and I, Darren, that I did invest in a new suit.
Okay, well, we won't tell anybody
nobody noticed that.
We won't tell anybody that, but great.
No,
always
keep
nice.
That between you and I.
Yeah, that's right. It's always nice to have a new suit. So, yeah. So,
Derek, can I just mention, sorry, before you,
go ahead.
On the morning show, I think Russell mentioned this morning that responded or sent a request. I think the request came yesterday, and the minister didn't respond, or the officials never responded. Yesterday was a very busy day in Confederation Building, and I think we had media lined up, and we had all that yesterday morning. So I do apologize. I would certainly have joined the show this morning, but through all the events of yesterday and into last night, then we missed that request that came in yesterday.
Yeah, no worries. We probably put out 20 requests like we do with everybody, but that's no worries at all.
Okay.
So no Prada for Minister Pardy on Budget Day, but today, and as you know and as you expect, everybody has an opinion on the budget and overall of the budget, and some people are, and not some people, but I'm hearing a lot of people saying it's kind of underwhelming, and sometimes I think governments do that by design, that they want to do the things that need to be done and get through budgets and make sure that they've got a firm grasp on expenditures and revenue. Do you feel that your budget was underwhelming?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I remember one show that the leader of the opposition was on with the morning show with Russell some time ago, maybe last week before. He had mentioned about, and Russell had asked him, what are you going to look for in the upcoming budget? And his comment was whether they were going to be able to honor all those commitments that they made in their Blue Book. And that was his takeaway. Not in one response did he say about affordability measures. Well, I would say that we've achieved 80%, at least 80% of what we stated we would achieve in our Blue Book. And our Blue Book represented what the residents of Newfoundland and Labrador wanted. They wanted a tax break. We wanted to reduce taxes. So what we did, whether I'm not sure if the members in the opposition have a clear understanding of it yet, but the basic personal amount will put $91 million more in the pockets of taxpayers of Newfoundland and Labrador. Now, if someone said that's not a good measure to approach affordability, then I would argue with that. We said that we would keep the gas tax reduction of 7.5 cents. The leader of the opposition states that, well, that was our. We did that. I can tell you as finance minister, they didn't budget for it for this year, so one would assume that it wasn't planned to be at 7.5, the lowest. So we had to do that as well, and I would think that was $67 million that wasn't budgeted for in the previous government that we had to put in there. So if you had the Newfoundland power rate increase with 75 or reduce what the increase was coming July the 1st to another $45 million, the reduction of the small business rate, the child tax benefit, the seniors benefit 20% being increased. We've put in over $200 million that is going out into the public, into people's pockets. Now, if someone says that is underwhelming in the financial position that we currently have, I would say I would argue with that stand. So certainly $200 million from the coffers going straight out to people to help affordability, to offset poverty, is a good thing, and certainly not underwhelming.
Yeah, and Minister Pardee, if I could, that $200 million, how long will it take that to roll out so that people actually see the benefit from some of that?
Well, we got to July the 1st for the that we're starting with the, and when I say that now, the 91 million. The cost of the basic personal amount would be a full calendar year. So obviously, this year it would be half, and that would be in due course be a tax time. So in tax time, they would get between $300 to $341 each of the 285,000 taxpayers in Newfoundland and Labrador. The increase in the seniors benefit, that'll be effective on July the 1st. And as well the bringing 3,000, the families of 3,000 more children into the child benefit, which again, that is one that we are very proud of because that was not adjusted since 2012. So 2012 was the last time that was adjusted.
Yeah, and just on that note, the 3,000 spots, and they're welcome, of course, and so forth. But the early childhood educators were pushing government for benefit package. That they feel that they're across the board, they're not able to get that. Therefore, turnover is big, and people move out of the industry, and they just keep trying to fight to keep people in the jobs. And there didn't seem to be much for that, if anything.
Well, Darren, we've opened up more childcare spaces. We've done that, and I think if my memory is correct, I know the Minister of Education had mentioned in the House that their first desire, the group, for the childcare was that number one, more spaces, maintain the $10 a day daycare, which the federal government is underfunded, maintain that. We've achieved those.
Yep.
So we did achieve that. We've started a working group now to work with them to look at the other priorities. And yes, that is one of the items. When I say 80% we achieved, is that we had mentioned in our Blue Book that we would certainly be doing. So while we've achieved 80%, we knew that we've had 4 years working to make sure that we would work towards fulfilling all our commitments.
Yeah, and you can't do everything all at once, of course, and given our financial situation, you can't do everything all at once. So, Minister Pardee, I got to go to break. Can you hold on for a couple minutes? We'll get you back on. We'll talk about a couple other things. Big one, of course, is healthcare. So if you just hold on, we'll be back in just a couple minutes. Thank you very much. Welcome back to Open Line. I'm your host, Darren Bent, and I have on the line with me the Minister of Finance, Craig Pardee, and the MHA for the beautiful area of Bonavista. Welcome back, Minister. You put a lot of money, and of course, I think it's 42 cents out of every dollar that we get in taxes goes to healthcare. It is it's a critical backbone of being a Newfoundlander and Labradorian and a Canadian. Universal healthcare, of course, but the wait time. Trying to get through emergency rooms and all of that has had some devastating effects on people. We had a person on the show this week that sat for 5 or 6 hours with their mother in a waiting room at the emergency here in the city and had to leave after 5 or 6 hours because they had an early dementia. Of course, it exacerbated them. And people around the province are hoping that at some point we will get a government that can reduce wait times, not only in emergency rooms, but for testing and so forth, because some of those waits are excruciating and possibly dangerous. Minister Pardee, you've invested in emergency room doctors and nurses. How can that help? How can we get there? The rubber hits the road with the people. We need to find the people. How do we do it?
Darren, wonderful introduction, by the way. Beautiful district of Bonavista. And people are looking for a government that can fix or address those issues. Better health care. And I would hope that they've got it. And under the direction of our health minister, Minister Evans, she's very passionate about making sure that we improve the system. We've took her passion and we've translated into an allocation of dollars to help improve. One thing, Darren, we mentioned about the healthcare or the emergency room wait times. We've heard from the physicians and we've heard from the system that quite often we have a backlog of capacity. It's capacity. So in hospitals, we may have people that are maybe experiencing dementia that would be in either the acute care, in the emergency room, but it is a lack of the appropriate care to serve the resident of Newfoundland and Labrador that it presents. So we're adding more acute care beds to St. John's in here. Those that would be in the alternate level of care position where their needs are better suited, whether it be in a personal care home or a long-term care home, we're adding spaces for more long-term care home. When you mention about delays on diagnosis, then we are adding the MRIs, Happy Valley Goose Bay, one in Grand Falls, Windsor, 2 more to come, as keeping with the Blue Book. We know that one of the greatest backlogs that would be in the system is in the echocardiogram. That would be. We've committed to 6 more echoes that would be in the system that would alleviate that time. We also have a program where we work with the personal care homes in order to look at their capacity to be able to have those people that would be in the acute care hospitals now. And again, while under the care that would be they're able to provide to look after them, but the better care would be in a separate environment like a long-term care or a personal care home. We've increased those capacities as well. So we would think that we've got the blueprint that would be out here to make a difference in the system. We would hope that from what we've heard, that in the reduction of the alternate level of care patients, i.e. those waiting for a long-term care placement or those with dementia, then that increased capacity should be able to free up more of the acute care spaces, and they should then be able to freely move anybody from the emergency room up to the acute care with a greater ability to do that, and that would reduce wait times.
Yeah. So one of the things that people would want to know, and of course you've only been in government for this is your 6th month.
Yes.
You might have been sworn in right around now 6 months ago.
Yeah.
They want to know, I guess, how long more do they have to wait for these initiatives to take effect, and then we can judge and see if those wait times are actually getting shorter.
I would think this year, Darren, we budgeted. As you know, we've had a significant budget allocation for health care.
Yeah.
The wheels are in motion for these things to happen. We've met with for those that would have the personal care homes. We know that we want to increase the long-term care capacity. Those things are happening now.
Okay.
So, I would hope that we ought to see an improvement in that in this current fiscal year.
Okay, and the recruitment of the doctors, nurses, that program, to help with the I guess the travel end of it and all that. How difficult is it going to be to fill those spaces, because they're the people needed to make the system churn the way it's supposed to?
Well, remember now, it was the practitioners or the lack of availability out in the communities in Newfoundland and Labrador that sent people to the emergency room. So as we increase the capacity to serve the people in the outside of the ER room, that has to alleviate the traffic at their ERs. One of the things that our Premier was totally and spoke about it numerous times in opposition, and one of the first things that he wanted to make sure that we had accounted for in the budget was to make sure that the nurse practitioners, that we were going to have more of them. We were going to implement that model so that whenever a resident goes to see a nurse practitioner, they don't have to pay any money to do that. So we've opened the door to make sure that they could increase their frontline presence in order to serve people at a time when they need to see a health provider at that point in time. And I think that in and of itself ought to reduce the demand on the emergency rooms.
And Minister, you've increased the money being put into the prescription drug program, and I guess people would ask, what does that mean? Does that mean more drugs covered? Does that mean more people covered? Expansion of who's eligible? What do you think it means?
26 million. In that 26 million, I can't tell you what those drugs are, but new drugs that originally weren't on our drug list to provide are coming on.
Okay.
So again, probably the health minister may announce that now in due course, but I'm sure they've done their due diligence on that. So $26 million to add more prescription drugs that people want to have to pay for.
Yeah, okay. So expansion of drugs means more drugs covered under that, and of course that provides some relief for people that have in the past maybe been denied coverage under that as well.
Correct. And one thing I just want to add, one thing that I'm very proud of, we talked about bringing the families of 3,000 more children on with the child benefit. That would be a child that a family that's making $32,000 with one child. That'll be a difference of but $900 that will go to that family for when we look at affordability, Darren, and that's with one child. And there's a formula of which if you got further, there's additional money that would be. Very proud of that. Another one we're talking about is that we're pleased with, and it's been. It's been a long time since they've had an increase. We looked at the foster families that would be out there.
Yeah.
And they provide a valued service. And I know that I've had several conversations with Jim Miller in Trinity. And we've had the conversations, and it makes sense. We found the drop in the number of those people with foster families because, again, the funding necessary funding provided didn't keep up with what the demand was or the cost of inflation. So when you go over 10 years without an increase in the foster families, you know that they're due, and there's probably a reason why we're dropping the number of those people that would open up their homes to provide, a quality space for a child in need. So very proud of that one as well.
Yeah. Minister Pardee, your deficit is projected at $688.5 million, and that is down. And of course, we've seen some revenue increases from offshore oil, given the state of the world. But the shadow minister, Sarah Studley, was on earlier, and she said you wouldn't even have to worry about that if you had this MOU signed and this money coming from Quebec. How do you respond to that? Because today is the day that the panel is expected to get government the review of the MOU that was signed previously.
Yeah, my response to that would be is that they spent like they had the money from that deal already in our accounts. And that would be my take on that comment. They spent money in anticipation of money that they didn't have. And I know that in this morning, I think the opposition leader used the word if. If we had a deal, then this would happen. But they didn't have a deal, but they had money within the budget, and they had grandiose ideas that was going to spend a lot of money and that cost us a lot of money without having the deal signed. One thing that we would go on the record for, and the Premier has said in the record for, that we are on the record, is that we will develop the Upper Churchill further. We will develop Gull Island. In conversations with the Premier of Quebec, they've been quite cordial. I think both are just eagerly waiting for this report to come in. My understanding is that Premier Fichette has been very understanding that it was a commitment made to the people of the province, and I think there's a degree of respect in honoring a commitment to the people of the province that we would have a second set of eyes, an independent review of that project. Yes, it is on time, so I would think that today, tomorrow, then there will be eyes on that report, and I look forward to hearing from the Premier shortly after as to where we are and what the path forward would be. But we are optimistic that we will have a deal. We are optimistic that we will get money in our coffers, but the money in our coffers will only be put in when we sign the deal, not on spec.
Okay.
It won't go on spec.
Yeah, and not only you, everybody in the province will probably want to waiting to hear what's going to be said about that review later today, tomorrow, whenever we find out the details provincially. One of the other things that's happening now, and of course, our revenue is up, which is great, puts us in a good spot. And you're talking about 5.5% growth, which is the highest in the country. And of course, we are, I guess we got a war windfall of money coming from the offshore as as well. West White Rose is expected to go online later this year to bring more of that money in. Are you anticipating a dramatic, if things stay the same, and of course I think they topped $126 a barrel yesterday or today, and they're back down to 121, but that's a huge amount of money for oil a barrel at this time. Are you expecting that the difference between now and the spring fiscal update could be incredible?
Well, I would wish for that. You know, there is no doubt about that, and very proud of our GDP, real GDP forecast at 5.5. And I stated in the budget speech yesterday, and just for our listeners on the program, Darren, the next closest to us in the resource development sector is PEI at 2.0. So that'll give you the margin of where we are. Alberta came in at 1.8%. So when you look at a GDP like that for the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, it greatly speaks to our resource potential. Through the Energy and Mines Department, Minister Parrott would tell you that, boy, his department has been very busy. There's a renewed interest in developing the resources we've got here. So, yes, I am optimistic. But again, I stand by the fact that until the deal is signed, that we know we've got it, we're not going to be forecasting anything in the budget. Thus, we look at the outlying years to say, we haven't accounted for anything that would be in the hopper that we think very positive is going to come. As for the oil revenue, indeed so. Will the oil revenue make a difference to the coffers of Newfoundland and Labrador? Without a doubt. Will the government be cognizant of the affordability issues for people in Newfoundland and Labrador? Without a doubt, we will be. It won't stop here. The only thing I'm saying is it depends on what our forecast would be. But if we got our increased revenues as in the coffers in Newfoundland and Labrador, there'll be two options to that. One will be looking at our deficit. The second will be making sure that we aptly address the affordability issues for the residents of Newfoundland and Labrador. So those are the two baskets for the extra revenue we've got. One, we can rest assured is going to go on the deficit towards the debt to reduce, and the other thing would be, or our lack of borrowing, to reduce our need to borrow, and the other thing will be affordability measures. We'll need to make sure that we look after that for the residents of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Mr. Party, thank you so much. You are the custodian of the finances of the province, and of course everyone is depending on you and your government to lead into the future now for the next few years. And I think the adage here in this province has always been we don't have a revenue or a potential problem, we've got a spending problem, and of course you've got to balance that with the needs of the province. So thank you for your time this morning, and I just want to finish off by saying a fella going around in a new suit shouldn't be wearing an old pair of Skechers into the house, so you ought to go get yourself a new pair of shoes.
Listen, Darren, I ask you to keep that between us, just between you and I on that new suit, because none of my colleagues recognized it. Nobody knew in the house. I may get a question on that now in the house this afternoon.
All right.
So just keep it between you. Listen, we won't let the residents of Newfoundland and Labrador down. One thing I can promise you that I don't think anybody working under Premier VOCM is going to be permitted to slack off. We will look after the residents of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Okay. Minister Party, the MHA for Bonavista, also the Minister of Finance for the province. Thank you very much for your time this morning. All the best. And we'll be watching the House this afternoon. Bated breath on the MOU review from the panel. Thank you, and you have a great day. And we'll be going to break now. I'll turn things over to Dave Williams.
Pleasure. Nice talking to you, Darren.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back to Open Line. I'm your host, Darren Bent. We've had a lot of talk about budget already this morning, and of course we just had Minister Party, the finance minister for the province, on. We had the shadow minister on earlier, and we're going to take a little budget break now because I'm going to go to line one, and on line one I have Chris Mercer with the Life Saving Society of Newfoundland and Labrador. And Chris, you're involved in training programs. You're a national trainer. Welcome to Open Line.
Thank you, sir.
Well, so we've had stories over the past little while, that is always frightening, but pan jumping in one area of the province. A couple of young fellows ended up in the water and had to be rescued, and they were rescued. And it's almost amazing that everybody was safe at the end of the day out of that, but they were. And of course, right now around the province, everywhere we can see icebergs, and they're like magnets for people to go out and get close to them. And as a person involved in the Life-Saving Society, what do you think people should be aware of, should know, should think about before they do any of this sort of thing?
Well, the number one thing that people should be aware of at this time of year is the water is still very, very cold. It takes the summer really to warm the water up. It takes the full breath of the summer and the sun to get that water to nice, comfortable temperatures, which is why we often find that our favorite lakes and ponds, they're not really comfortable and warm until the end of August. So at this time of year, it's still winter cold in the water. So that is the biggest hazard at the moment for people. When people fall into water or enter cold water unexpectedly, their swimming ability is immediately impaired by that cold shock that they experience. And hypothermia sets in almost immediately, the signs and symptoms of hypothermia. So the cramping of the muscles, the limited mobility, the difficulty breathing, all these things on top of falling in the water and being immersed in the water are going to impair your ability to get out of that water. So that's the danger, is that cold water, it's the temperature and the effects on your body. So that's the number one thing people should be aware of and be concerned about but the ocean water, lakes, ponds, and rivers this time of year is that sudden immersion can put themselves into a very dangerous situation immediately.
Yeah, we have people, we've heard about stories, and some of them tragic, some of them not, of course, but people that have been on the edge and they want to help or they want to do something. They're going to get in the water, but they don't have much time, do they, when they make that decision? No. If they hit that water, how much time would somebody have before the full effect of their muscles giving and losing the heat from the body to be able to maneuver in the water?
This time of year, with the water temperatures the way they are, it's going to be immediate. And I could not definitively put a time on it. That's not how the human body works, but they're going to feel it within seconds. They're going to feel that cold Christmas. Everybody who's listening has probably had an ice cream cone too fast and had that ice cream headache effect. We've all experienced that. That's what your body's going through. That's the best analogy that I can draw to kind of put it into people's minds. This is what your body's going to feel like. You're going to have that feeling all over your body as soon as you hit the water. So the best thing that people can do is just use the caution around the water. If you're planning to be around water or on the water at this time of year, because obviously some of our listeners are going to be people who work on the water, you need to take appropriate safety precautions. Dress in your immersion suits, have your PFDs and your life jackets. If you're not planning to be in the water, then make sure you're not putting yourself in a position where you could accidentally end up in the water. It's just not worth it. So the situation in Labrador, a great success, and we're all very happy to hear that was a positive outcome. But unfortunately, these things can become negative outcomes very easily, and we don't want anybody to have that experience. We don't want any family going through that type of tragedy.
Yeah, and Chris, you guys offer all kinds of tips and advice and training programs and so forth, but there are all kinds of thoughts out there that, I don't know what you call them, like old stories that go around, myths that are developed over time that give people a false sense of security around cold water and cold, snow-covered lakes and ponds and all these different things. What are some of those myths that are just, they're just myths, they're not true?
I can't think of any right now. I'm really sorry. Mostly because I don't put a whole lot of stock in the myths. The biggest thing that I would say is the research that the Life-Saving Society does around drowning and drowning prevention tells us that in a large portion of the drownings that happen across Canada, in an overwhelming capacity, people don't plan to be in the water. They did not intend to be in the water. They weren't going for a swim. These are people who've fallen off docks, off of boats, hit too close to the shoreline when waves coming in, et cetera, and were either fell in or pulled into the water somehow. Because they weren't prepared to be in the water, they're not dressed for it. They don't have the appropriate equipment on. And so that's the number one thing. Number two thing is the cold temperatures of Canadian waters across the country through most of the year, that cold shock effect and the hypothermia that sets in after. That's another aspect. And the final one is, in most cases of drownings across Canada, people are fairly close to safety. So one of the programs that we teach to young children in Canada, it's available across the country through the Life Saving Society. We work with grade 3 students, and we teach them what we call swim to survive. We teach them how to swim 50 meters because we know that the safety distance of the drownings we have observed are less than that. So if we can teach them to swim about 50 meters, if we can teach them to tread water for a minute so they can identify where safety is, then they are being set up to be prepared to survive an accidental fall in the water. That's some of the training we do, but the tips and advice I would give to the general public is, if you're going to be around the water, have a life jacket with you, have a PFD with you, have some kind of rescue aid. Us getting in to try to help someone obviously is a very noble cause, but it can also put ourselves at risk. So what we teach in our programming is something called the ladder approach, where we teach our youth, mostly youth candidates who take our programming, we teach them how to approach a situation and do it safely. And as you go through the ladder, as we refer to it, you're going higher up the level of risk to get to the safety, but you're always trying to stay at the lowest rung on the ladder possible to be able to help somebody else out.
Chris, we've got some beautiful days recently. We're going to have some more. We're tempted to do things that you probably ought not to do. And, of course, for young people, getting out on ice pans and so forth like that might roll into shore is an absolute no-no. We've seen some awful tragedies in this province because of that. And, of course, the icebergs tend to draw us like a magnet, like I said earlier. Safe to take pictures of them from the beach. And if you are in a boat, wear your life jacket and all of that. And you getting into schools, I think, is an incredible, valuable tool to tell young people the things that they should know. Just any final word before we let you go?
Just certainly that if people are interested in our programming, again, our programming is kind of tailored for a younger audience, but it is available to anybody who's interested. Our life-saving programming, our lifeguard training, and other programs, feel free to reach out to your local pool, because we are a community-based organization. So the pools run the programming. We provide the programming. Reach out to your local pool, inquire about programming that might be appropriate for you, your family, or your swimmer in your family, and certainly get them enrolled and involved and learn some of these skills. Okay, thank you very much, Chris. And of course, wind change, and next thing you know, you get all these pans in close to shore. Safety risk, not worth it at all. Thank you for that. Training programs for the Life Saving Society, Newfoundland, Labrador, local pools, and so forth. You can reach out to them. They offer all kinds of tips and training on their website that you can find. And great, thank you for being on this morning, Chris. And all the best. Anytime, my friend. All right, you take care. We'll go to break now. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Welcome back to Open Line. I'm your host, Darren Bent, and we are going to go straight to line 2 with Sid. Sid, good morning. Welcome to Open Line.
Good morning. Good morning. A very heady day in terms of all the comments about the budget and things that are going on. I actually have two things. I'll comment on the budget, and then I have a small PSA to do. Yeah. The budget, everybody's looking at little things in the budget too. We didn't get this and we didn't get that. But if you look at the budget overall, and when we reviewed it yesterday, it was very people-centric. We're seeing a lot more towards the populace of the population as opposed to the businesses. And they did give a business tax reduction and all the rest of that stuff, which is wonderful. But in my area, which is the disability population, and making sure that everybody has accessible and equitable world to live in, they addressed the 31% of the population that has not been addressed for years. So we were very happy about that at the coalition. And, a bunch of other little things that came out of the budget were all very positive. Now, this is a triage budget, which a lot of people don't realize. This is a new government coming out and trying to look at what's been happening for the last 10 or 11 years and trying to make some sense of it. So this is the way I look at it, and, try not to be negative about some of the things that have been going on.
Yeah, so I mean, look, I mean, they've been in government for 6 months. They've had a budget for 1 day, not even 1 day.
Yeah.
And and I pressed the minister on some timelines as to when people can start expecting to see some of the benefits of what they are proposing. And when he gave us a sense of it, and then you get into that range of time, then it's fair to say, well, wait a minute now. You said this was going to happen and it hasn't happened, or it has happened and it's not working, or whatever. You always get into that play too, and of course, it's common nature to criticize right out the bout, and right off the bat. Sorry, and but all those questions are good because we need answers to them. You don't get a lot of details on budget day. You get the brush of it, then they got to announce the details as time goes on. We'll hear, I'm sure, from all those ministers over the next little while what the actual details of each of those programs in their departments will mean, and timeframes and all that.
Yeah, and in terms of the world that I live in, we've been waiting for many years for things to change, and we see that slow change happening, and we're very positive about it. And that's what we need more in let's show some positivity here and, take what we can work with as opposed to what we wish for. It's that type of situation these days where the amount of money that's needed to solve all our problems is just not there. We can't do it. We're not $1 trillion place that can put money wherever it needs. We have to, like any business or any place, organization, you have to look at where you put the money wisely as possible so that, you can build a future. And that's what I'm hoping this government will do.
That's what we hope all governments will do. And, of course, this is the one that's on the clock right now, and we'll be watching closely to see if they're going to be able to do it. And we'll
Absolutely.
Go from there. Yeah.
So, there's a lot of little things that I've heard this morning that people say, we could have done this, we could have done that. Yes, I mean, this is the first year, and there's only so much to go around. So, in terms of all the discussion that's going on, I have a lot of respect for the fact that they asked the question. They wanted to hear the people's ideas. They wanted to incorporate what we said from all the different organizations they spoke to. So I'm very encouraged about that. I mean, anything more after that is not. It's just time, and we won't know until that time passes how everything works out.
Okay, Sid, you had a second part now. You wanted to do a little PSA on something.
Every year around this time, the federal government puts one more little task in front of us, especially the seniors and those that are on the dental program. You have to renew every single year, and you can only renew if you've done your taxes. So I would recommend that anybody that's on the program that have done their taxes to go to the federal site, to the dental site under their Service Canada, and get your renewal done. Otherwise, as of, I believe, June 1st, I may be wrong on that date, you will no longer be covered by the insurance.
Okay, all right. So that's a good tip, and is there anything else that people ought to know about getting that done and getting that taken care of?
It's once you get in, and I use that with a little caveat of it took a little time, but once you get in, the process is really simple. They have this new security documentation the resource that they put in there so that they know that you are you. So it's not just one, phone number to your phone and you sort of put in the PIN. You have to do another security either through email or through some other source to get started. That's the only caveat in the whole thing. But other than that, once you get in there, the process is very simple and very quick.
All right. Well, thank you, Sid, for bringing that up. Very important for a lot of people. And we're up against the newscast now. Is anything else before we go?
No, I just wish everybody a wonderful summer and a safe summer.
All right, Sid, thank you very much. We're going to go to the newscast at 11 o'clock now. We'll be back shortly here on Open Line.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to Open Line. I'm your host, Darren Bent. We've got Dave Williams in the production studio as always, and you can reach us here on Open Line around the metro area, 273-5211, or anywhere outside the metro area. Toll free, 888-590-8626. And I'm going to go to line 3, and on line 3 I have Tony. Tony, welcome to Open Line.
Yes, how are you today, Darren?
Not too bad, sir.
Doing a great job.
I appreciate it.
Yes, first I would like to touch on the MOU that I hear. The shadow minister on this morning, and when they were in government, they were all shadows because you could never see them. They would never, they were nothing, only put us in death and in a mess that we're in today. When I come to the MOU, you had Fred Hutton on there a number of times and John Hogan saying that they didn't even know what was negotiated. The MOU was only a start. And it would come back that they didn't like it. They were going to vote against it. And now they're coming out saying how much money they were going to make. And in fact, Michael Williams, he was on there, and he quit because it was going to be so bad that we get $2 up front. And they were misleading the people. And as it went on, because there's no clause there, that we were actually going to lose money. And it was going to be a worse deal than Churchill Falls. So, and John Hogan at that time wouldn't release the contract to say why he quit. And everybody wanted him to, and it was so bad that he wouldn't even release it. So, and when this is why this deal was stopped in the first place. They were going to give it away.
Are you confusing John Hogan with Andrew Fury, or are you talking about the panel?
No, John Hogan was
the panel. Yeah, okay.
It.
Sorry, yeah.
And the MOU and the reason why the PC opposition at that time walked out of the House was the fact that when Andrew Fury went in to debate this, he said it doesn't matter if they vote for it or not. This was going to go ahead. So why would they stay in the House and vote when this wasn't going to go ahead? This was going to go ahead anyway.
Yeah, and of course that's a political move in one respect, I suppose, for walking out of the House as a symbolic gesture as to their opposition as to how the whole thing was being handled, of course. And and when you have a majority government, you could argue that it doesn't matter on a vote anytime if the opposition is going to be there, if all the government's going to vote for something. So I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the same thing with when it comes to health care. They're hiring doctors. They're actually going to pay them the salary that they deserve. Same thing with she was saying about doctors was they put it out at the time. Andrew Fury put it out. Any doctor wanting to come home, that they would pay him the salary. That they were welcome there. They would pay him the same salary. The doctor was on there that one that phoned a number of times to come home, and he would have to take a 40% cut just to come home. And he had other ones there that was 9 respiratory therapists graduated, and they never even made them an offer. In fact, they let people come in from other provinces to make them all kinds of offers. We had 8 radiation therapists quit in 9 months because they were overworked. They were getting paid $10 less an hour. Now, if they were paying them decent, we wouldn't have the problem in that we had. And they're going to hire more people to replace the people that we actually lost under this and the Liberal Party. So when you go, they just destroyed. You had a doctor here that graduated and they wouldn't even make an offer. She went away. And we had another doctor in Trapassi. They wanted her to go from St. Mary's to up to CVS and back to there. And the only thing she asked for was $7,500, and they wouldn't even offer. They wouldn't even pay her. So this is the kind of health care we got under the Liberal Party. We lost it. We lost the health care that we did have. We went from 6 to 8 weeks, probably at most, for a knee surgery, hip surgery. That's what they brought it down to. Because when they took over back in 2003, we were the same way we are now. 3 and 4 years just trying to get in and have heart surgery or knee surgery or hip surgery, and people were dying trying to get in there. And all that changed when they got in. And the same thing now. The Liberals brought everything back, skyrocket taxes. They put no money in healthcare. In fact, what they were doing was taking care of their friends by all kinds of money gone out and nothing to show for it. And now we're right back to where we were too. We went right back when the government got in the past, the PC government. They brought in 168 specialists, like psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors, and that's what happened. And they're doing the same thing now. They're going to hire nurses as they graduate. In fact, they're going to open more school class seats for nurses to go to school.
Yeah, and if I could, right? Tony, I mean, we've been going around this circle for government after government after government, and wait times and, emergency room issues, and all of this has been a continuous problem, and nobody has seemed to make much of a dent in it so far. And we always live in hope, don't we, that the next government is going to be able to do it. One of the things that is true, though, when it comes to nurses and doctors, they're no different than skilled contract workers with construction companies and so forth. There are higher bidders out there than provincial governments, and you're in a competition. And if you don't pay the money, in a lot of cases, unless they are really, really, really diehards and want to stay or possibly come back, to finish their years in their career, they're going somewhere else, for the extra benefits, and we only, it's like anything, you only work for so long. How much do you want to make? How much do you want to get back out of it? And we've got to be able to compete. So if we're not paying them doctors, the nurses, and so forth, the money that puts them at least on an equal footing with whoever is bidding against them, if not even more money, really, because there are other benefits the living somewhere else can provide you, other negatives, of course, too. But we've got to be able to compete with the money. And if we don't have the people, all the facilities that you're building and all the clinics you're opening are going to sit empty. And we see some of them sitting empty now. So you're right on with that.
Yeah, because right back in, I was thinking 2017, they kept the doctors. They were always on TV on open line because they were getting treated so bad. They held them out for 4 years for a contract, and then they said, you either take it or leave it. I mean, that's the kind of attitude they had towards our health care. And the fact that doctors, I was one of the specialists I had, they went to government, and when I just started, they give them an idea. They give them how to fix the problem, and they wouldn't listen to them. And they were losing doctors left, right, and center. Like I said, we brought our health care down, up, that when they were in the past, they brought them up that you go in, and most you had to wait then. If you were serious, you got in right away. But if not, you wait. But right now, you're waiting, went from 6 hours to, when the Liberals took over, went to 24 hours. And, was people waiting absolutely in ambulances with a nurse in with them for 12 hours in a parking lot waiting to get in the hospital. That's how bad they let it go. And then for them to get up and say, but healthcare, it's unreal, and all the millions of dollars. In fact, last year, as you know, that was $80 million in fraud given out to the nurses, that were flying nurses, that wasn't even supposed to do it. I mean, they've used department after department for millions of dollars of slush funds that our general said they couldn't even keep track of it. I mean, it's just what they were doing. Yeah. It's unreal. And, and the education is the same thing.
Tony, I'm going to put you down iffy as a Liberal supporter, but I will say this, we've got this government here now has had 6 months. The next 6 months to a year is going to tell us whether the initiatives that they're making are going to make a difference. Do you have a final thought before we move on to break?
Yes, I mean, to get up, then for her to say today, like the shadow minister to say about our fishery, it's the most important thing. I think you remember not too long ago when the fishermen had to go up on the hill protesting against government because they weren't doing anything. In fact, they wouldn't even open plants or pay them money or fight for them. And they were out there on the last, they even had they had a SWAT team up there with shields and everything else up there. And it was only for the fishermen that didn't give up. And they were trying to turn the people away from the fishermen by not saying, we're not going to put the plants out of work. But that's all they wanted, was somewhere to sell their quota and to get a decent price for it. But and when you get them paid off, I mean, they're not going to give up until they get an answer and gets what it is, and then they try to take credit for it. So when the Liberals were there, there's nothing they sided with. There's nobody. The only thing they sided with, like I said, is themselves, looked after themselves, and they put this hole in this province in such a mess that, I mean, half the businesses were closed down. All right. But hopefully now we'll see it recover again. And this government was only in for 6 months. I mean, it took them 10 years to destroy it, so they can't fix it in 6 months.
Okay, that's a good final thought there, Tony. Appreciate your time this morning, and we're going to go to break. We're going to be back in a few minutes. We've got Patrice with Child Care Now to talk about the budget, and Captain Barry Rogers of Iceberg Quest are going to talk icebergs. Okay, we'll be back in just a moment on Open Line. Welcome back to Open Line. I'm your host, Darren Bent, and look, the beauty of this province is unmatched, I have to tell you, and sometimes I think we take it for granted, and of course we are blessed with the majesty of icebergs off our coast, and this year is a bumper crop. I've been looking at one in Conception Bay all week, and I know on the other side, on the north side, they see it. It's right there. I have Captain Barry Rogers with Iceberg Quest on the line. Barry, you got to be impressed with this year so far.
I certainly am, and really, it's looking forward, like you say, to a great season. We had a great season last year, but I think this one is going to be equal or beyond.
Yeah, no, we seem to be getting them a little earlier, and they seem to be coming one right after the other, don't they? Just give us a sense of what you're seeing yourself and where you're seeing it.
Well, right now, I mean, a couple of days ago, one showed up there off of Cocos Cove, there off of Kitty Vitty, just off there to the north side of the St. John's Harbour and approaches. So we're getting ready there now. We're all ready to roll, and looks like Saturday now we got a full boat, so we're going to try that one first. There's another one up around Petty Harbour there as well. That's for our St. John's operation. And Tullygate now, we're getting ramped up there as well. There's 4 or 5 there, looks like within reach. And we'll be, looking forward to taking folks out to view those as well in the very near future.
Yes, and I had the gentleman on from the Life Saving Society earlier, and of course, these icebergs are like magnets for people that want to get out there and get right close to them and all that. But there's a safety issue involved in that, and people got to be very mindful about icebergs. And of course, you have a company that provides a service that would take people out, of course, in a safe environment. And if you just want to speak about that and maybe your concerns about the safety around icebergs.
Well, absolutely, Darren. I mean, I'm not a frequent caller, of course, to Open Line, but this morning when I heard that gentleman there, the earlier caller, it would be remiss, of course, if I didn't touch him with you. For sure, icebergs are beautiful, majestic, but very dangerous as well, and it draws, just a copious amount of people to our province here. In Tullygate, for an example, I mean, it represents probably as high as 40 to 50% of my business there, given a good ice year. So it's something that we certainly hope and pray for every year for sure. A couple things, again, what I suggest to locals and inbound visitors alike is, number one, if you're going out to visit icebergs, to view icebergs, make sure that you go with a certified operator. This time of the year, particularly in May and June, in an open boat, if not properly equipped, if not properly with PFDs and the actual, floater suits for warmth and things like that, you won't last too long in the water if you happen to have a capsize. So that's one thing. The other thing is, too, this thing sometimes that a lot of folks come into town and, you got some locals that say, I'll run you out and see that iceberg there as well. I'm sure, it's a friendly gesture and probably a cheap one because they're probably doing it for nothing or just a little bit in comparison to a licensed operator. The fact is, they're not only endangering themselves, but tourists, but they're also endangering the industry. And we pay, huge amounts of money each year to be able to be inspected and insured, et cetera, and it would be a detriment to the province if we happen to have an accident or incident like that. And there has been those, So that concerns me, a bit as well. So.
Yeah, so I suppose if somebody goes out in a small boat and it capsizes or something, the iceberg moves on them and you end up with a couple fatalities, then of course that information goes across the country through the news services and it makes people skittish about wanting to get anywhere near an iceberg or go out in some of the boats. So I suppose it has a negative effect on the commercial industry that you're into as well.
100%. I mean, the rules then would be looked at. There'd be regulations probably would be implemented, and a ton of paperwork. I mean, we're in a changing world. There's no question. I mean, I started this here back just about 30 years ago, and I mean, we're carrying thousands of people every season, and knock on wood, we've had no incident, and I'm not looking forward to one. But again, I mean, we're proactive. I mean, we have the best of equipment. We invest heavily into our vessels and our crewing and our safe management programs and our exercises, that we do in our drills on a weekly basis, things like that. And it's very important that people recognize and appreciate the great investment, not just with Iceberg Quest Ocean Tours, but tour boats right throughout the island here that has been doing this for a long time. And I wouldn't like to see it tarnished, by something that is just on a whim, basically,
Yeah, no, it's incredible industry, and it's great that people can avail of businesses like yours around the province to get a chance to go out and see these icebergs a little closer. But tell me now, Captain, how close do you get?
Well, it depends, Darren, on the iceberg that we're working with. Now, you get sometimes folks, I'll call them sometimes couch potatoes that are all experts. And I don't mean to be a little harsh this morning, but I've seen it all, of course, with the social media racket these days. You'll get someone come in showing a beautiful picture, and then half a dozen people will comment, but, it's very close. What happens? It tumbles. When you're taking a picture is not the reality of it when you're on shore looking at a boat near an iceberg a lot of times. But cautionary, of course, I mean, we have a method to that, like, a long tabular iceberg, you don't have the height, for an example, so you can probably get a little tighter in, a little bit, a little closer if you want. But, a big pillared iceberg, of course, as far reaching, and they're 90% larger underneath. So, I mean, there's a huge amount of tonnage underneath that. So it's not just what's coming down onto you, is what's coming up to meet you as well. But again, we have a formula for that, and usually it's several times the length of an iceberg, things like that. Sea conditions, wind conditions, if it's aground or in free float water, there's a method. And again, a lot of it I can't even explain. All I know is that I come from 6 generations of mariners, and I guess it's like the old fellow said, it's born into me. So there you go.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic industry, and the growth of it is great for Newfoundland and Labrador. Those icebergs really sell themselves. They sell the province. It's great for businesses like yours, of course, but it's great for the communities where the boats are. It's great for the tourism industry across the province. It's something that we have to be mindful ourselves here, that it's something to protect, something to be do in a safe manner. And one of the things that I do, and as no offense to you fellows, but I'm going to enjoy them from shore as a landlubber, as they say. So, Captain Rogers, thank you very much for your time this morning. Greatly appreciate your insight, and all the best with the iceberg season this year.
Well, thank you very much, Darren, and I will tell you, you're doing a great job, and everyone appreciates that in the province here. Tourism represents 1.4 billion, and that's not to be smiled at. Thank you for your interest this morning. All
right, Captain Barry Rogers with Iceberg Quest, thank you for coming on. We're going to take a break now, and we're going to come back with some more folks here that we got in the queue. If you want to give us a call, you can. I'm Darren Bent, your host. This is Open Line.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to Open Line. And just a note before we go to the next caller, we've been getting a number of calls about a breach of Canada Life and, of course, accessing people's information and so forth. And what we're being told, and, of course, the finance minister addressed this yesterday in the House, is that this is isolated to government employees and retirees. And Canada Life is saying that the issue has been addressed. But if you do want to confirm that your information, if you deal with Canada Life, is secure, give them a call. And here's the number. I'll give you a second to prepare for it. It's 1-844-349-5656. So once again, that number is 844-349-5656. Also, if you're looking to find out more information about the budget of the government of Newfoundland and Labrador, has it all up on their website, GovNL. You can search that. If you get on the page, there's all kinds of fancy links that you can go to. But if you want to get to the guts of it right quick, just go down to the bottom of that page and you'll see something called news releases. And the news release that they have there will give you a highlights package. And then you can go find, after that, go back to the next page, and then you can find more details about what you're looking for in the main page under some of those headings that they have up there. Okay, we are going to go now to line 6, and we have John on line 6. Good morning. Welcome to Open Line.
Good morning, sir. How are you this morning?
Not too bad, boy. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad. I called yesterday on your topic, but I couldn't get into the queue. There were too many. So what my topic is the math. This new math.
Well, as long as you don't ask me to answer any questions, you go ahead.
I'm in my 80s. When that new math come out, and my son was in school, he never had any problem with math until this new math come. No, I've always been good at math. So when he came home this evening, he had 5 questions he had to do overnight for homework, and he couldn't do them. He couldn't understand them. He didn't know what to do with it. So I sat down at the table with him and looked at the questions, and between the two of us, I guess, or I did, or whatever. Anyway, we worked them out the way that they were worded, and wrote down. I worked them out, and we wrote down the answers. And he took them to school the next day. And when he come home, supper time, or when I got home after supper time, I asked him, I said, how'd you get on with your math? He said, the teacher wasn't very impressed, he said. He said, I had all the right answers. He said, but I out of 100, I only got 40% marks. I said, why? Well, he said, I didn't do them right. I said, what do you mean you didn't do them right? The teacher told him that the way I was thinking wasn't the right way to do the problems, and for me not to help him anymore. Now, you know, I'm not a engineer, or I'm not a scientist, but if you got a problem and you can get the right answer, what's wrong with that?
Yeah. John, that's a question that has been asked by generation after generation after generation for a long, long time. So you're in your 80s. I would guess that you were doing this, about 50 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not in my 80s, but I was doing this about 25 years ago. Same thing. And, if you got a math problem, and not even a real complicated one, John, a standard problem, my daughter had to figure it out in a way not to get the right answer so much as to be able to explain why the answer was the answer and how she got there. And they, I suppose that's a more in-depth way of looking at math. I'm not so sure how important that is in grade 3, but maybe it is. I'm not an engineer myself either, or a mathematician or a scientist, but I knew how to get the right answer.
I know that, but I know how to get the right answer. If you can get the right answer, that's all that counts, really. Unless you're going on to be a scientist and something like that. Well, then you would take up new stuff probably in college. But in school today, the math is a dreaded subject for all the students. Most of the students that work, like say part time in places where they got to use cash register, they don't know anything at all about that. They're dumbfounded. They cannot add 2 and 2.
Yeah, and what's funny about that, John, is that I'm not even sure generally in the world today, and and I, like I said, I haven't been around as long as you, but my tooth is getting longer. That I'm not so sure at my age I can judge whether they need to know that or not anymore. Right? They don't need to know how to write cursive anymore. As a matter of fact, I know somebody now who is actually teaching a course at one of the local colleges in cursive.
Yeah, well, that's like trigonometry and algebra. After I got out of school, I never ever used that before. After?
No.
It wasn't my field. If I went into that field, well, then I would use it, and I would go on to upgrade it as need be. But for a student in grade 4 or 5, they want to go back to what we used to do. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. What we used to call them the times.
Yeah, the times table. Yeah, you had to memorize them. Oh, yeah. I know.
Memorize all the times table, Yeah. And if all the students had to do that today, I think their math would be a lot better than it is.
Maybe it would be. And I know one thing, there's a standardized math that you have to have for university. I can't remember the name of the course, 1060, I think it was. It was, is not that it was dreaded, but it was certainly a requirement, to get your degree or to get through your first year of university. And of course, suggestions are that we're behind the curve quite a bit when it comes to kids coming out of high school and being able to do that math. John, did you want to have a final word before we move on?
No, the old saying used to be years ago that if something works, don't fix it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I can tell you this. They lost me in math when they started multiplying and dividing letters. Okay, we'll let you go. I'm going to move along to line 3 right now where we have Sam. Sam, good morning. Welcome to Open Line.
Good morning, Darren. How are you?
Good boy. How are you doing this morning?
Not too bad. I was looking at the gas prices, and it's crazy. But I don't know if anybody else has noticed it, but when you go to the pump, you're up to 8, 9, almost $1 before a cent of gas goes in your car.
I haven't noticed that, but gas prices are so high, I think that my bank account gets debited about $10 every time I drive by a gas station.
Well, you just notice that next time you're filling up, some stations are 5 cents, and it clicks in. You can feel the gas coming through the pump. Others are up to almost $1. Some are $1.
Maybe we're paying for it to suck it out of the bottom just to get it up to fill the nozzle to get it out. Maybe, I don't know.
So do it come out of the nozzle afterward, or do it go back in the nozzle?
Yeah, no, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Certainly.
Yeah, it does.
But they have to calibrate those things, though, and I think that they're inspected for what they're doing. But yeah, it's a good question. Hey.
That's what they're going to tell you. They're calibrating them. But anyway, and another point is, if I go in a Tim Hortons, for instance, and it's $2.06 for a coffee, if I pay with cash, I pay $2. If I pay with my debit card, $2.06 is debited from my card.
Yeah, you got that right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So
and everybody's paying with their card, right? So.
Yeah. So 24 million Canadians are doing that a day. Where's all that money going? Is it going to Tim Hortons?
It is.
Is it going to the government?
Yeah. So what I would suggest, though, is buy a Smile cookie while you're getting that $2.06 coffee, because that money goes locally to charities to help them out.
Yeah, I know that too. I'll buy them too, but it's still the same. It don't make any sense to me what's happening, but.
All the fees and charges and the way that works now, and of course the penny's been gone for a long time. I don't know what's next, the nickel and the dime probably. Very rarely have any use for them in my hand, because everything is done by the card now these days. But, fees and charges and all that. One of the things that's getting a lot of people too is, they sign up for stuff online or apps and all that, and they get billed every month for things they don't even use. You got to be really diligent when it comes to that sort of thing. It's not just Netflix. It's all kinds of different things people sign up for and forget about. Next thing you know, they're automatically coming out of the account.
Well, like I said, if it's no pennies anymore, how can they debit out of your card, out of your account?
Yeah, they should make all the numbers between 5 and 0 gone if you can't have a penny, right? So.
But if you get rid of nickel, we'll be paying 50 cents to whoever gets it.
Yeah, I hope nobody heard that I said that. Yeah, I used to jokingly say that with bank charges, it just felt like my account was getting debited every time I went past a bank as well. But there's lots of little fees and charges and nickels and dimes that add up over time. And if you're a regular spender with your card at places, like you said, sometimes maybe over time you could save a few dollars with cash in your hand.
Exactly, like they always used to say, cash is king.
Cash is king. Absolutely. Cash is king until the economy collapses, and then it's only gold. And who has gold?
Exactly. But you take account next time you go to the pump, put some gas in your car.
I'm going to have a look, and I'm going to check it out and see if I feel the extra dollar coming out of the pump at the end to make sure it's there in my tank. But Sam, thanks for raising this. Interesting thought for sure. And I know that most of the people now that are listening are going to do exactly the same thing. They're going to check that out. And if we get more calls tomorrow, we'll know what's going on, needs to be checked on for sure. Sam, you have a great day. You take care.
You too, buddy.
All right. We're going to go to break now. We'll be back in just a moment. We got a couple people in the hopper there, and we'll get to them, Patrice and Jerry, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Welcome back to the program. And we addressed a few minutes ago about the calls we were getting about the Canada Life breach. And a friend of mine just sent me the note that they got from Canada Life. And there's a number that you can call. So if you are concerned, if you haven't received anything and you are concerned whether you're involved or not, it seems to be a government worker issue in their plan. But there is a number you can call, 1-833 811-1062. Again, Canada Life, 833-811-1062. And I'm going to Patrice on line one. Patrice, good morning. Welcome to Open Line.
Morning. Good morning, Darren. Thank you. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. So you want to talk about the budget, of course. And I suspect you have a sense of disappointment today.
I don't know if it's disappointment. Is there a stronger word? As all that has been happening in childcare and all the talk about it in the House and the ECEs, I spoke to you a week ago or so, and the ECEs were on the steps of Confederation Building talking about the lack of benefits and the lack of recognition and the lack of compensation, and there's nothing in the budget for the workforce. It is unbelievable.
Yeah, so, the government is saying, the finance minister does say that they're going to have ongoing talks with early childhood educators and so forth to try to, I guess, get a bit further down the road. But in this first budget, they didn't get to it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's obviously not important. I mean, continued talks is not action. And we're expected to go out every day, and we're expected to help the system run. And Newfoundland and Labrador we have an aging population. And if we want young people to come in, if we want young people to stay in the province, I heard you speaking to someone earlier about young people leaving the province for better for themselves and their families. And if we want people to stay in the province, if we want people to come into the province to work in these industries that are getting the money, I mean, I'm happy for the health sector. They're getting more money, which is needed. But if the nurses don't have childcare, how are they going to work? And I don't think that we're understanding and appreciating the importance of the sector of early childhood, early learning and care. Because if we are not there, people cannot go out to work. And I cannot for the life of me understand why people are missing this very important detail.
Yeah, no, it's there's so many people across this province depend on the early childhood educators. They depend on them being there to do the job that they're trained to do, and you want them to be happy in their employment and all of that. And I know that we did have a caller in from one of the agencies around last time that suggested that they did offer some package for their employees as well, trying to keep people happy, trying to keep the turnover down. But the turnover is a huge problem, isn't it?
Yeah, we're going to have attrition. We're going to continue to have that because people don't see it as a viable option. We've asked for pensions. People don't know how they're going to retire. We keep saying it. If these young people don't know how they're going to retire, they're not going to stay. If they don't have equitable pay, everything is going up. The gentleman just now spoke about the gas prices. And if we can't afford to buy gas to get to work, we can't afford to buy food, we can't afford to pay rent and mortgage. We can't afford to do stuff. The minimum wage has increased 3 times in the past 3 years, and there has been no increase to ECE wages. We have a medical and benefits plan that is not equitable. And there are just so many things. There are just so many things that ECEs have to face day to day. We were hoping for the paid sick days. We were really hoping for that because every day ECEs going to these early learning centers and they are infected because the children cough in your faces. You can't, if a child comes up to you, if they're not feeling well, you can't tell the child to go sit in the corner. An ECE is empathetic and by nature. And if we have children, we have to love them. We have to take care of them. It is not in our nature to not do that. And if we're going to be looking after these children that come in sick, then we are going to be sick. And if we're sick, we need to be paid to go home. We can't go home and not be paid because that's our salary going down again. There is taking from us something that we already don't have. And the government isn't seeing and understanding this.
Yeah. Well, Patrice, all I can say is all the best in your talks with government to see where that goes. And I know that the parents that you are supporting their children, they would prefer, I'm sure, more stability in the workforce so that the turnover is not as great, so that the connections for a better experience are made. And I'm sure that all the people you're talking about, all the early childhood educators would prefer the same thing. Patrice, I'm going to move on to another call right now, but I thank you for your call, and we'll look forward to hearing from you in the future on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Darren.
Okay, we're going to go to line 4 now with Jerry. Jerry, good morning. Welcome to Open Line.
Good morning, Darren. You're doing a great job as a host.
I appreciate that, Jerry. That's not what you called, though.
No. I got speed up, too. I got much time.
No, you don't have much time at all. I got to be honest with you. But you go ahead. I'm glad I got you on.
Yeah. I'm speaking about, well, I'm going to start off with statistic cancer. I got down there because I'm going to lead that there for a minute. I'm going to go down. 39. My wife was 39 years old when she passed away, but no, that's a lie. She came down with breast cancer in 2000. She put up a good fight for 5.5 years. In 2005, on the 21st of December, she closed her eyes for the last time. But down in her death certificate, they wrote down renal failure. And she had cancer right onto her whole body.
Yeah.
She took a drug called tamoxifen. And I was talking to a scientist at the time, and she said, if you live in a high electromagnetic field and you're taking that drug, your chances of recovery is nil. Oh. And we had a 25,000 kV power line directly over the roof of our home. The power company came in and like an old-fashioned cassette player type thing with a gauge on it, and a 3-foot cord, and like a D-sized battery on the end of it. Mm. And I said to him, I was up on the roof with him, I said, why have you got masking tape on that battery? And I took the serial number and all that, pictures, and I Googled it. And when there's tape on it, it distorts the reading. So he said there's no harm, nothing to worry about. They ended up moving 23 poles. I live on a turn here in North Sound. Mm. They moved 23 poles, and the scientist said, how come they moved those power lines? I said, they said they're doing an upgrading. She said they could upgrade on the same poles, but they moved all them poles. I'll say one more thing. The 5th house up from me, the second one, next one to me, had a person with cancer. The next house, a young lady dies with cancer. Then I skipped one house, and then the 5th house is all my first cousins, 6 out of the 7 got cancer. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 dead. 2 still living with cancer right now.
Yep.
And 2 passed away within 7 or 8 weeks ago. And transformer was 15 feet from the old 2-story house. There's no installation back in the day, and the bedrooms are upstairs. So, it's scary but true.
Yeah, and are all of them taking tamoxifen as well?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, no, that's a frightening reality that you're living there, Jerry. That's for sure, and your family and so forth. So where does it go from here then? Where do you go from here?
I got them to move all these power lines right around me.
Yeah.
So they came down the rail bed. They went up towards Cornerbrook West, right? And they came down the rail bed, and then they cut across the road and stuck one right by my bedroom. My bed is out in the living room. I can't sleep in there.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's too close to me, but I'm picking up the fields or whatever it is, the magnetic field.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say one more thing if I got time.
You got about 30 seconds.
Okay, I'll do it. I saw him just down in Australia. He said, I can only imagine, Gerald, what electromagnetic fields were coming down in your home when your poor wife was living. And she was a housewife more, so didn't have her around.
Yeah.
So thank you for the time, and it was nice talking to you and David as well. And you have a wonderful day, both of you.
Jerry, I'm so sorry to hear about all that, and especially your wife. Condolences to you as well. And terrible situation. Hopefully that can get remedied for the future and not happen to anybody else. But unfortunately, it's a reality of your family now. Look, we've reached the end of our program today. I want to thank everybody for listening, especially, but all those who called in, making it an excellent show. Thank you very much. And to Dave Williams, who I'm told is not going to be here tomorrow. He's leaving me on my own. Well, okay, thanks, Dave, but you enjoy your time off. Anyway, we'll be back again tomorrow morning. Thank you for listening. We have the 12 o'clock news coming up now.